The Carpathian mountain range spans 209,000 square kilometres in a great arc across Central and Eastern Europe. Cradled beneath its jagged peaks and hidden among trackless miles of forest, is perhaps the world's only surviving medieval landscape. Formed at the same time as the Alps, much of this great range straddles the area of modern-day Romania known as Transylvania. It's a place of myth and legend, a land where the distant howl of the wolf still chills the night air, where bears sharpen their claws on towering pines and lynx prowl ghost-like among the sullen crags.
Carpathia is truly vast. Almost the same size as Britain, it constitutes the largest tract of unfragmented forest left in Central Europe, and is home to the world's greatest concentration of brown bears and 45% of Europe's big carnivores. Their presence helps to preserve one of our most abundant ecosystems.
I'll be travelling to the very heart of this breathtaking region in an attempt to uncover the history, the culture and the wildlife of what is Europe's last untamed wilderness.
My journey will take me through the foothills, where ancient villages survive practically unchanged, despite Romania's stampede towards modernisation. I'll be exploring the forests and mountains beyond, as we go in search of the European brown bear, and find out why this elusive species is so vital to the survival of the environment. On my way, I'll be meeting a dedicated group of individuals, whose passion for this area is helping to redefine its importance as one of the great surviving wonders of the natural world. These include a Transylvanian count who is working to conserve some of the most ancient of Carpathia's medieval villages, and His Royal Highness Prince Charles, who can trace his ancestry back to Romania's dark and distant past.
The genealogy shows that I'm descended from Vlad the Impaler, you see. So I do have a bit of a stake in the country.
As it were.
With its deep gorges, cliffs and windswept bluffs, Carpathia is a popular destination for lovers of adventure sports. People come here from all over the world to rock climb, kayak and get back to nature. But for many Romanians whose parents were herded into cities by the communist regime, the mountains offer something far deeper, a chance to reconnect with their rural heritage. To get a feel for the geography of this unique mountain range, I joined Mihai Constantinescu, leader of the local Alpine Association, his wife Mihaela and their friend Nicoleta Carpinianu for a 2-day trek through the Apuseni region.
Yeah, finally.
Thank you. Yeah, these roads are a bit labyrinthine.
Yeah. Must get used with this.
Hi. Nicoleta. Hi. So where exactly are we going?
They will going to have around 15 kilometers.
Yeah.
We'll set the tent tonight, and tomorrow we'll do the rest of the trip, and finally we'll reach the daffodil fields. That is very spectacular, and we have to be there because now they are fully bloomed.
At their very best.
Yes. You see, that's the traditional way of harvesting the woods.
Yeah.
They're using horses for that, to carry the woods.
Yeah. And this would be...
This is wood
for the firewood,
yes,
yes,
exactly.
the oven. Yeah.
Will be used for fire.
As you head up into the hills, the terrain rapidly grows wilder and the forest closes in around you. This is a world so ancient and unspoilt that our presence feels as ephemeral as the footprints we leave behind us. All my life, I've dreamt about visiting the Transylvanian wilds, but where Bram Stoker describes a sinister and haunted landscape, instead you find yourself in a world more redolent of Tolkien.
This is actually the longest cave in Trascou Mountains. It has more than 2 kilometers of caves and galleries.
So this great chasm is a system that goes right back through the mountain?
Yes, it's going through the mountain. You can actually go and get out on the other side. You can see the place where the water goes in, and it pops up here.
This tributary, though, is part of the Ariash river system.
Yes, exactly.
And the gorge that we're about to walk to is the next door valley, I presume?
Yes, it's a parallel valley to this. It's like several hours of walking.
Well, lead on.
Okay.
We approached our campsite as dusk was fading to black. A fire was already lit and a local troupe of travelling minstrels were practising for next week's big daffodil festival at nearby Negrilliasa.
This is a traditional pursuit for Romanians at weekends in this area. They come camping, it's one of the big things you do here.
That's right. I think we're very lucky we got such beautiful countryside here, and most people appreciate that, so they come here weekends, also summer holidays. They usually get a tent and their backpacks and they go in the middle of the mountain, so you have to carry everything with you.
Including your musical instruments. The festivities continued late, a single small island of light and warmth in a vast ocean of night, the only other illumination being a pale, vociferous moon.
Check the coast is clear for bears. Oh. Morning in the mountains. I haven't seen it yet. This is my first view of it properly because we arrived in the middle of the night. It's paradise. These high alpine meadows, the smell of the juniper bushes, the light, just can't beat it.
After a long morning's walk, we reached the wild daffodil pastures of the Apasan Hills. And although the festival was due to be held the following week, the ground was already a carpet of white.
Well, I'm so glad we've finally made it. It's taken us,
Yes.
what, 2 days, 50k, thereabouts. And here we are finally.
Yeah, nice place to come to.
What an amazing place to
Yes.
come to. It's truly wonderful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure,
Being my
anytime.
guide. I think we should sit down and just take it all in. Enjoy the view.
These stunning meadows of daffodils are just one of Carpathia's many floral spectacles, as I discovered when I caught up with head of World Wildlife Romania, Erica Stanciu, at a local food and crafts festival in Nucșoara.
Erica, hi. Hi, thank you.
Nice to see you.
What a wonderful spectacle. Is this a regular occasion?
Well, it's becoming regular. It is an old tradition that stopped during the communist times, and now it is being renewed. And the local people, including children, are very, very happy to do this and very
Absolutely.
proud.
And these are all the local crafts, are they?
Yes, these are all local people coming together to have fun and do some work as well. So this is a traditional social event, if you like, a social
It's a social club.
Exactly.
Why are the Carpathians so important, so unique?
Well, because we still have large areas of wilderness, which means very well balanced ecosystems with the whole array of habitats and species that were naturally here and still naturally are here, with the natural processes still happening.
Because this is really unchanged from the way it was 1,000 years ago.
Yes, there are large areas, large core areas I would call them, which are still in their natural form. These large wilderness areas are linked with corridors, and this means that animals have space
And they
to
can move freely.
They can move freely.
Why is that so important?
It's vital. It is vital, especially for some of the species like the large carnivores that need large spaces to
Otherwise,
survive.
presumably you get inbreeding.
Otherwise, there will be inbreeding. Otherwise, the whole population will be disappearing, if you like,
Right.
because they need space to live. These are large animals that need large areas to feed on, and it's crucial for them to have these corridors between the wilderness areas.
You have a lot of cuckoos around here.
Yes, and many other species of birds. We have many wonderful species of flora, fields of wild daffodils and wild orchids and many other species which are very different from one season to the other. In May now and in June, up in the alpine areas, you can see wonderful gardens of wildflowers.
Inhospitable though the Carpathians often are, people have been living here for millennia, and the mountains around Gradistia de Monte conceal something extraordinary. What you see today is estimated to be less than 10% of an ancient city that lies tangled and buried beneath the roots of the forest. The ruins of Sami-Sejutusa, capital of the Dacians, have been described as the Machu Picchu of Europe, although they predate the Incas by nearly 1,000 years. Around 200 AD, it was the cultural, religious and military heart of a civilization that stretched from Slovakia all the way to the Black Sea.
But this is an area that's proved almost impossible to conquer for any length of time. The Romans were forced to pull out due to the high cost of policing such wild terrain. Then came the Huns, the Avars, the Slavs and the Bulgars, the Magyars, and most enduring of all, the Saxons.
Travelling northeast towards Brasov and the foothills, you reach a region where the German language is still widely spoken, and many of the people are descended from immigrants who came here in the 12th century. Or at least that was the case up until the early 1990s.
This is an all too common sight these days. Empty houses, derelict village halls, crumbling churches. And while the younger generations spurn the peasant lifestyle for the draw of the big city, a far larger problem faces areas like this one. Following the revolution and the fall of Ceausescu, the German government gave its Saxon cousins the opportunity to return to their homeland. Faced with the choice between continued hardship, poverty and political instability, or the chance of a new life in the West, many families literally upped sticks, leaving everything behind them.
Fortunately, not all of these depleted settlements have been abandoned. Aside from a growing Romani population who have moved in to take advantage of the free housing, there is still a stalwart Saxon contingent who have stayed on and are attempting to inject new life into what is a vital part of Romania's cultural identity. The village of Viscri is one of the lucky ones, where members of the community have banded together to preserve their architecture and traditions. Many of these houses date to the time of the first settlers, direct forebears of today's inhabitants, like local resident Caroline Fernelend.
My ancestors came 1142, invited by King Geza II of Hungary to defend this area against the invasions. So they came with a golden letter, we call it. And this is why they built 240 villages in Transylvania, and every village has a fortified church. All the time somebody was watching from the tower to see if it is dangerous, and then they would ring immediately the bells, and everybody
Piles into the church.
very quick,
Locks
very
the door
quick.
behind them, yeah.
Of course. This is Alba Iglesia. In 1400 it was first mentioned, and from this is coming the name of the village. Deutsch-Weißkirch, Saas-Ferechhazo and Viscri in Romanian.
Right. White church in German.
White church in German.
Marvellous door.
It is a very simple church, and our daughter, she finds some rules from 1640, how the community was organized and what they have been allowed to do and what not. For example, if somebody during the service was snoring and your second neighbor would hear you, you have to pay a fine.
So it's okay if you fall asleep, but you must do so very quietly.
Very quietly, yes.
And presumably there was a pecking order in terms of where people sat in the church.
Yes, this we are respecting also today, even if we are 8, 9 people. For example, the young ladies, they sit in the back, and when you get older, you move more in the front. After 80-year-old, you have to sit here close to the angel of death. This is the last station alive. It is preparing you
For the afterlife.
for the afterlife.
How extraordinary. That shows a very healthy business-like attitude to mortality, really.
Look at this.
It is unbelievable. It's just so big, you can see, I mean, all the tiles, all the beams, all the way up the structure inside the tower. I mean, I felt like I was gazing down Noah's Ark, you know, as you saw the roof of the church. The amount of work that must be required to maintain a building like this.
Community has done this when it was needed. This is why they have not built something new here. They only maintained the church and the towers how they have been always. Ceausescu in '88, he proposed that 8,000 villages like this to be destroyed in Romania, to destroy our identity. This was his goal. And now Viscri and other villages are listed, recognized by World Heritage, UNESCO.
It's so lucky he was deposed in the nick of time, I think.
When I'm here, I feel that I'm the richest person from this world. And if you are here in the evenings and hear these birds and insects singing, I really think it is wonderful, and all stress from the day is gone.
Disappears. Yes, I think gazing out from this balcony has to be qualified as a form of meditation, really.
It is, and I'm very grateful that I'm allowed to live here and now in this democracy.
While the 21st century is starting to make its presence felt here, for the Saxon contingent, daily life is still remarkably unchanged. With the influx of tourism and the opening of several guest houses embracing both the traditional and the more modern, greater effort is being made to preserve the old ways. Everyone in the community has their role, whether it's the daily grind of making flour and baking bread for the village in stone ovens, or looking after the livestock. When you live this close to the Carpathians, one of the more full-time jobs is tending the sheep. Accompanied by their packs of ferocious Heinz 57 guard dogs, these shepherds have to spend nights sleeping out on the hills to protect their flocks from the constant threat of large carnivores.
Am avut. Deci acum ce să spun eu asta? Cum atacă lupul.
They had problems.
Da,
Usually
lupul-
the wolves are attacking.
Lupul te atacă, te pândește. Șade drept o grămadă cu mărăcini undeva, vine, te vede că ai trecut încolo și s-a sărit pe oaie.
Does he ever get scared? Because presumably if he catches a wolf attacking a sheep, he's got to go out there and try and bash it over the head with his
Dacă vă e frică.
shepherd's crook.
Nu mi-e teamă, dar el e fioros. În momentul când în momentul dacă îl apuci de el vezi tu înainte și nu te vede el, e bine. Dacă te vede el și l-ai văzut tu, răgușești. Nu mai poți răi, gata.
Would he rather there were no wolves, or is 1 or 2 sheep a year an acceptable loss to have large carnivores living in Romania?
Deci să nu ai pierdere, pagubă.
Dar să fie urși lupi.
Poți să fie urși lupi, dar să nu ai pagubă.
Every day, Stelaka and his colleagues drive their flock for miles across the open pasture. And most exhausting of all, as I found out, they also need to milk each sheep by hand, twice.
Hello. Yeah. It's official. I'm milking a sheep. It's not as easy as it looks. That one's empty, Joe. We're done. Let's try this. Very nice, sweet.
Alas, this way of doing things could soon be outlawed, as dairies and local cheesemakers are shut down because they can't afford to comply with the bewildering battalion of EU health regulations. One organisation that is striving to prevent this from happening is ADEPT, a charity that maintains local methods of farming and living off the land are essential for the survival of a rich and varied ecosystem. I caught up with British-based founder Nat Page.
We're now in a typical damp lowland hay meadow, which is probably the most threatened kind of habitat in the whole of Europe today. They existed around villages in Western Europe and Eastern Europe, and really they've only survived in Eastern Europe. Here, just in this square metre where we're standing, in the beginning of June, there will be 60 different flower species in every square metre. The diversity of the flowers is just absolutely unbelievable. And that's because this has never been fertilised and has never been sprayed. And this kind of landscape is of fantastic European importance.
You say it's under threat. In what way?
There are two reasons. One is the need for farmers to make money. So unless they can get value for the goods they produce under these conditions, they'll be forced to intensify. And the other is abandonment, that if this land is left uncultivated, it will degenerate into a low value scrub, which doesn't have nearly the diversity. And we're not talking just about flowers here. There are between 100 and 200 species of butterfly that have survived because of the lack of spray. And so we're trying to protect the biodiversity. The biodiversity depends on the people and the management by the people, so we're also trying to protect these small-scale farming communities. But the other most important long-term way of promoting survival is helping them get a proper price for the goods they produce, bringing innovative marketing means to support traditional production methods.
In many ways it seems that these smallhold farmers are custodians of the landscape because their continued survival ensures the survival of this ecosystem.
Yes, let's hope we can keep as much of it as we can. Who knows, in 10 years' time, this will not be the same.
Well, it will be here in 10 years' time if everyone comes to look at it and experience it and enjoy it.
Yes, look at it, enjoy it, and support the local economic system. And the system will continue.
Perhaps the best way to explore these gently undulating fringes of Carpathia is by mountain bike. A set of trails has been built through the surrounding woods and hills, linking Viskri to its neighbouring villages, and whilst there's nothing too challenging, it's a great way to see the countryside. I arrived back to the village at dusk, in time to witness one of the most iconic spectacles of rural Transylvanian life. Early each morning, the cattle, individually owned by members of the village, take themselves out to pasture. In the evening, they unerringly manage to find their way back again.
For anybody who thinks cows aren't intelligent, have a look at this. They know exactly where they're going, they don't need to be told, they just peel off into their respective homes. As Romania's economy is developing, the environment faces ever greater danger. With much of the country's biggest natural resources either under the ground or sprouting out of it, the impact on this mountain paradise is increasingly costly. This is one of thousands of illegal logging operations that are taking place as I speak in the mountains of forest of this area. Look at this tree, you can count the rings. It's over 100 years old. It's not even selective. Well, it's selective in as much as they take the largest and the oldest trees, cart them off. It's a tragedy.
Deforestation is the greatest threat facing this wilderness. As far as the government is concerned and the people who have been restituted land here, Carpathia's main value lies in its prime timber and mineral deposits. For a country struggling to catch up with the rest of Europe, this region is, literally in some cases, a gold mine. Insufficient resources to police such a huge area and a reluctance to do so makes it almost impossible to prevent such wide-scale clear felling. On top of this, the absence of planning laws is giving rise to a spate of new and often ill-conceived developments, like environmentally damaging ski resorts, hastily built to take advantage of the influx of foreign tourists.
If operations like this one are allowed to continue due to greed and corruption and the demands of the Western world, then the forests of Carpathia will probably disappear within the next 10 years.
But with Romania still such a poor country, it's hard to argue that they shouldn't be allowed to exploit their natural resources to improve quality of life. I've come to the frontier of the forest near Zarand with friend and environmental activist Radu Mot to visit one of the last people whose existence remains untouched by the wheels of progress.
What a glorious place to live, but how isolated. We're here to meet a woman called Varvara, who's been living on top of this mountain all her life. Her husband died 24 years ago. She's got no running water, she's got no electricity, and no one around her for miles. It's a tough life.
It's a tough life indeed. Bună ziua!
Bună ziua!
Ce mai faceți?
Ia că te-a și cu greu. La
Charlie,
mulți ani, la mulți ani.
how does she survive up here?
She have some cows, but nobody will buy the milk anymore.
So she gets no income,
No income.
whatsoever. You have problems with wolves here as well, obviously.
Da, frică, nu, ce să
The
faci?
wolves killed a dog last autumn. The wild boars is destroying the crops.
And she's got no one else to protect her if they come, you know.
Just the dogs.
They don't look very fierce, I have to be honest. So she purely subsists off the vegetables she grows and from the milk and the livestock.
Exactly.
And water, what does she do for water? I can't see any springs around here.
De unde vă aduceți apa?
De acolo din pădure de jos.
There's a spring down in the forest.
How does she get it up here?
Am mai dus cu vatra, dar nu mai pot, numai cu sticlele duc.
She's carrying plastic bottles full of water because she cannot carry the buckets anymore.
Well, there are 2 buckets there. Why don't we go and fill them up for her?
Cu astea cărați apa.
Da.
Vă ajutăm noi să le... Ok, let's do it.
Da, dacă vrea.
Okay, back in a minute. I'm not surprised she's scared of coming down to get water in the woods when she's heard a dog being killed outside her very door, you know. The wolves attacking one of her dogs while she was probably in the house.
I'm sure she's afraid, but Romania, it's known for this tradition of coexistence between people and large carnivores.
And this is a particularly important section of the Carpathians.
This corridor connects a separate population of brown bears in Apuseni Mountains in Central Carpathian with the main population from Southern Carpathians. Large carnivores can exist in Europe without acceptance of local people. There is motorway planning to be built further south that will completely block.
Well, they're not going to be able to get across, so...
Exactly, without effective mitigation solution.
It cuts that migratory route straight in half.
Exactly, it will be a total barrier for wildlife.
Well, here's the spring. I see what she means. It's a long way to come, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Especially if you need a glass of water in the middle of the night and you hear the howling of the wolves outside. I presume that this is scooping out the water.
Yeah.
Right. Can't believe she has to do this every day, and she doesn't even use these buckets. These little bottles don't last very long, so it must be constant coming back and forth.
Exactly, but it's the only way for her to get water.
I think we should try and raise some money, get her a generator and a water pump and a hose sorted out.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
V-am adus apa
Vă mulțumim frumos.
cu plăcere, numai
Trăiți la mulți ani.
sănătate, numai bine.
Să dea Domnul.
Hope that'll keep her going for a while.
It is remarkable that so much of Romania's natural forests survived communism, a fact that can be partly ascribed to what has ironically become a right-wing pursuit: hunting. One reason the Carpathians are still home to big predators is because Ceausescu forbade hunting by ordinary citizens, according the European brown bear total protection in order to have exclusive access to trophies in the late 1970s. Today, Romania is home to over 5,000, around half of Europe's total bear population. One man working tirelessly to ensure their survival is naturalist Christoph Promberger. I joined him on one of his regular trips to monitor bear numbers in the forests north of Brasov.
The wilderness really needs large carnivores because they keep the whole system in balance. They keep the ungulates under a certain threshold so the forest can regrow, and when the forest can regrow, all the other species, the birds, can live and so on. So the large carnivores are really important to keep everything alive.
By ungulates you mean herbivores, you mean the deer?
Red deer,
the
roe deer, to some degree wild boar, the chamois in the higher elevations. For example, if you don't have wolves, then the chamois will go down in the forest, and then in winter, and then they can eat a lot of the young trees. But if the wolves are there, the chamois, they stay high up, and then they don't damage the forest.
They protect the trees, they protect the forest from being overgrazed.
Exactly, the wolves and the bears and the lynx, they're on top of the food chain, so they control everything which is under them. When they control the ungulates, like the deer controls something below them, and so on. The whole chain keeps going. But if the wolves and the bears and the lynx are gone, then everything gets out of balance.
I can't believe how many lorries there are. This is such a common sight on these sort of roads. You just see one every 2 or 3 minutes, it seems to me.
It's terrible, yes. I mean, they're taking so much more out than they should, or that they could take out. It's absolutely not sustainable.
Why is it so important to preserve these forests? I mean, Romania is a poor country and wood is one of its greatest resources.
Well, that's true. We don't need the wilderness, but we don't need St. Paul's Cathedral, we don't need football, we don't need any of these things, but still we want to have them. And we are just one out of hundreds and thousands and millions of species, and they all have the same right to exist, and they need this wilderness. So we cannot just come and say we destroy it all. That's just, we can't do that.
In this area, there's about 25 bears that are coming more or less regularly to this height. The height is just around there, about 150 meters from here. We gotta be very quiet now.
They're the same family as the American grizzly, aren't they?
Yes, they're actually the same species. They're just a different subspecies.
Okay.
Yeah. We might look out, there might be already tracks. Now that we find tracks on the ground.
They don't really attack people very often.
No, don't worry, don't worry.
No, I know.
I'm with you, I protect you.
This hide was used by trophy hunters who would lay down food and sit in comfort, waiting for bears to wander into their sights. An iron frame was employed to measure the size of prospective targets. Haunches of meat were hoisted, and bears tall enough to reach them were deemed fair game. Today bears are still fed and monitored, but to propagate their numbers rather than furnish the homes of the party faithful.
Oh yeah, this black one, that's a 5-year-old female. She's not coming very often, but I've seen her here before. It's amazing just to see bears so close. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah. What is it? It's not even 30 meters, isn't it? I know. They probably smell us, so they know that there's somebody here. But if we're quiet and if we don't do any fast movements, they will tolerate us here. Okay. Is that meat down the far end there? Because it looks like she's sniffing around there. Yes, that is the leftovers from the slaughterhouse. They came word and brought about a week ago a truck full of that stuff here. Okay. Mainly sheep guts and the sheep heads. Do they prefer that to the muesli? Well, of course, the meat is very protein rich, so they prefer meat. But it starts to get a bit smelly, so I think pretty soon they won't. I can smell a bit of it. I think pretty soon they won't touch it anymore. The cubs. Yeah, oh yeah, that's a mother with 3 cubs of the year. They were born in January. Oh, look at that. The first time this year that they come out here. Yes, they've never been here before. No, she was very careful with them so far. So that's the first time that they're here. Wow, so this really is a special occasion. Fantastic. Well, how big are they? 15 kilos now. Tiny. Yeah, that's so cute. They're heavy ones. Look at that. See how he's no one hanging off. He's trying to hang on. I imagine you never get bored of this. No. You come here almost every day, don't you? You can sit here every evening. There's every evening something else happening. I can watch this forever. Yeah. Really good.
As well as his environmental work, Christoph and his wife Barbara run an eco-lodge, which offers guided excursions to the bear hide, as well as kayaking trips. Their riding school, Equus Silvana, lays on equestrian breaks, where guests can spend days galloping through fenceless wilderness. Miklișoara, in the Hungarian-speaking area of Carpathia, is a small village near Barault. I've come here to meet Transylvanian Count Tibor Kalnoki, who is transforming the local community by converting disused homes into traditional guest houses and offering visitors the chance to step back in time.
Tibor, hi.
Welcome, Charlie.
Good to see you.
How are you?
This is the most impressive hunting lodge.
Yes, it's 500 years old and it's been abandoned for the last 50 or 60 years.
and we're now starting slowly, one step after the other, to restore it.
There must be a huge amount involved in restoring a place of this size.
Yes, first a lot of research to see how it has been before, and then the techniques, the old techniques, have to be used. So it's quite a big job.
So you're doing everything in the traditional way?
By hand.
By hand. How many buildings have you got in the village?
In this village there are 6 houses with barns and all the other buildings around it, and then the manor with its domain. So it's if we take the buildings themselves, it's something like a dozen of
So you're
buildings.
creating quite a space for people to come and stay and experience the village life here. I know this is just open pasture, but it does feel like we're in some great park.
Yes, these wonderful trees, which are hundreds of years old, have been giving shade to the cattle, and that's why they're here.
They're here, and they're mostly oak, it seems to me.
Mostly oak, and some of them are over 500 years old.
Tell me the history of your village. I mean, your family have been associated with this area for nearly 1,000 years, haven't they?
Well, the village itself is the oldest of the whole region, of the Sekla land, as we call our region, which is populated by the Seklas. And it's going to have its 800th anniversary this year. The family is slightly younger. They came only 40 years later, so it's something like 760 years now.
A relative newcomer.
Yes, absolutely.
And you were living in exile for quite some time during Ceausescu's reign.
Yes.
You then got the go-ahead to come back.
Exactly.
How
So
was
I was raised mainly in France because my grandfather had already to leave just before the Second World War, actually, as an anti-fascist. Poor man, he was anti-fascist and anti-communist and was born in 1900, so he had a difficult life.
He was ahead of his time.
Yes. I came back in the 90s and started to sue the state for illegal expropriation, and I won some of the cases, but we don't have enough land to make a living from. So we decided to live from tourism, because it's the ideal way also to support the villages themselves. For example, in our guest houses we employ more people than we have beds, and we're very popular within the village, because the way we employ people allows them to keep their farms. If they would go to the city, they would have to give up their farms and their way of living. Exactly. So this is just the right way for them to earn an extra living, but to keep their own lifestyle.
And not compromise that.
Exactly.
Do you think that this wonderful way of life, do you think it's doomed? Is it inevitable that it will die out?
I hope not. You know, I've seen in America and already in England also reenactments of, in open-air museums. People get dressed and then they reenact ways of life they think it might have been 100 years earlier. Well, here this is not necessary yet, because it's still happening. But it is so important to keep it going, because once we lose it, it'll be lost.
Gone forever.
Gone forever.
The next morning, Tibor and I took a trip to the even more remote village of Zalampatak, where he's been working closely with His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales to restore several properties as examples of how rural tourism can benefit local communities without impacting on the environment.
One thing about Romania that I always find surprising is you drive down these roads in the middle of nowhere and you come to these little pockets of civilization.
And then you have something like this.
And you have something like this at the end of it.
Have a look at the main house. We have 3 rooms here. Been quite some painstaking work restoring all this furniture.
And your carpenters did the veneers and did all of this?
Yes, and the polishing and the upholstery and everything. And even these electrical fittings had to be restored.
And the paintings?
Paintings, most of the paintings have been hand-picked by HRH.
I love this. This is a carpet, presumably.
Yes,
original.
these are Turkish and Caucasian antique carpets. Once they are too old to be kept on the floor, we put them on the walls.
Well, it lends a warmth to the room,
absolutely,
which I imagine you need in the middle of winter, because it gets quite cold here, doesn't it?
Exactly, you got it right, yes.
I've seen this colour on certain buildings in parts of Spain. Is this a traditional lime wash here?
Yes, here it's called Transylvanian blue, and it's a characteristic here for serfs' houses, for stables, for houses that are not dwelling houses.
So this is the old stable building, which we converted a bit to a more comfortable place.
Yeah, just a bit. Well, it's a fabulous place to come and hide away What's the inscription there? I got the Wales bit.
Yes, it's a tradition to document the dates of building and renovation in houses in the main beams. So this one reads, this house has been renovated by Count Thibaut Carnocky in 2009 for the Prince of Wales.
It's so satisfying watching craftsmen at work. It's immaculate when they put the tiles in.
Yes, I wonder how they get it right. It's not so obvious, actually.
No, it is like doing a jigsaw puzzle, really,
Yeah.
I think. Tell me, Thibaut, why did the Prince of Wales fall in love with this particular place? I mean, I can see it's very beautiful, but why here?
I suppose it is because it's a place where the local population still lives in total harmony with the environment, with nature. And it is not complete and total wilderness like up in the mountains. It is actually handmade, but it is the perfect cohabitation of man with nature.
It's easy to forget in such comfortable surroundings that the forest is still only a few feet away from the back door. A fact I was reminded of when I took a quick stroll in the adjacent hills. Walking up through fields of orchids along the edge of the tree line, you are completely immersed in the natural world. I never dreamt that I would actually see bears in the wild outside of Bearhide, but here was a sight I'd been hoping for all along. Proof that man has yet to ruin this pristine and innocent landscape.
This is incredible. I can't believe my luck. Look. This is why the Carpathian forests, mountains and villages need to be preserved in all their untamed glory. Not just for the benefit of future generations, but to ensure the survival of Europe's most endangered carnivores.
If something isn't done, then this verdant paradise will become as ecologically barren as the Highlands of Scotland. Once covered by magnificent forests of oak, beech and pine, now bare with new saplings grazed into submission by a wildly inflated deer population. But it's here I've come, on the last leg of my journey, to meet one of Carpathia's greatest crusaders, His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales.
The key thing I think about Romania, and Transylvania in particular, is that there's so much we can learn from, it seems to me. It is the last corner of Europe where you see true sustainability and complete resilience and the maintenance of entire ecosystems for the benefit of mankind, and also for nature. And there's so much we must learn from that before it's too late, I think.
So presumably this is why it's so important to preserve it for the future.
Well, I think so, but people will say, oh, well, she's just trying to preserve things in aspic, or trying to prevent progress and so on. But you'd think by now we might have learned a few lessons from the things that have gone wrong with an agri-industrial approach to everything. Because the great thing, it seems to me, about Transylvania is the combination of natural ecosystems, the forests and the agricultural areas, together with the human cultural systems. And it's this extraordinarily unique, integrated relationship which is of such huge importance. Once you pull it all apart, you're left with something which can just be exploited without being treated in a sustainable way, if you see what I mean. Because if you cut down great swathes of the Carpathian natural forest, you're actually destroying one of nature's great services to the rest of mankind in terms of carbon sequestration.
Given the fact that the rise of industry and agriculture has led to the almost total destruction of the Great Forest of Caledon here in Scotland, do you think that there's a way of stopping the same thing from happening in Romania?
Well, we should be clever enough, wouldn't you think, by now, and wise enough to
We'd
realize
hope.
that some possible lessons to be learned in avoiding that from happening. Otherwise, if we just go on the same way, you end up with destruction occurring, and then people later on saying, hang on a minute, you've got to try and put this back. What is the point of running into the proverbial brick wall, this time of such a painful sort, that by the time we realize that we have to redesign our food systems and put nature back at the heart of the whole process in order to provide us with what we take for granted, how are we going to be able to put it back?
Yeah.
So I think Transylvania is an absolutely key issue that has to be addressed
What do you love the most about Romania?
It's the timelessness of it, which is so remarkable. And almost out of some of those stories one used to read as a child, it's quite remarkable. People are yearning for that sense of belonging and identity and meaning. And we have to rediscover some of these aspects of the way we produce food and live with and maintain and give back to nature if we are to make sure this whole system continues. And that's why human cultural systems matter, because they're intimately linked to that aspect of nature. It's in us, but we've somehow denied it and thrown it away and said it doesn't matter, it doesn't exist, it's irrelevant. It isn't irrelevant.
Nourishes the soul and the heart, absolutely.
That's what Romania does for you.
The Carpathians, one of the most beguiling and mysterious regions on Earth. Over the centuries, it spawned countless legends and inspired sinister depictions of a place often viewed through a darkened lens. But as we showed in episode 1, the reality of this preternaturally beautiful mountain range is very different from the fevered imaginings of Bram Stoker's Gothic prose.
Here is the last great wilderness in Europe, where predators like wolves, bears and lynx still roam freely, and traditional rural cultures survive despite the rush to modernize. This time we follow the southern arc of the mountains, from the Iron Gates, a deep gorge carved by the Danube, and heading east through national parks, past hot springs, ancient citadels, monuments, wineries and medieval villages. We rejoin the Danube on the other side of the mountains, where it branches like an enormous tree to form its dendritic delta. On the way, we will see very different environments. The Carpathian Mountains, home to the largest concentration of old-growth temperate forest in the world, and by contrast, Europe's most expansive wetland, a vast reed-covered haven for rare and exotic fauna. The Carpathian Highlands are a catchment zone for hundreds of water systems that flow inexorably into the Danube, like the Cherna River, which converges just below the Iron Gates. As with much of Romania, this is an area rich in history. In this place, Roman Emperor Trajan built the first bridge across the lower Danube, enabling the deployment of troops for the war against Decebal, king of the native Dacian tribes, whose depiction you can see carved 40 meters high into the cliffs at Orshava. On their march towards the Dacian capital Sami-Segetusa, the Romans discovered a utopian valley, where hot water flowed steaming from the hillsides. Here they built opulent baths and founded the town of Herculani, which grew to become one of the world's most famous spa resorts. But since its heyday in the mid-1700s, Herculani has fallen into decay. Only now have its fortunes begun to recover, with a new 5-star hotel about to open and a raft of other projects in the pipeline. The old town is constructed around springs, which possess differing mineral properties, believed to cure a variety of maladies. For instance, there's one for the eyes, another for intestinal complaints. It was in the 1730s, during the time of the Great Habsburg Empire, that Herculani rose to prominence. Numerous regal resorts sprang up, all dressed in the gilded opulence of Austrian Baroque, and host to a firmament of kings, queens and glitterati. However, the end of the Habsburg era and the steady decline of foreign visitors meant that its fortunes peeled and faded, like the plaster and paint that covered its palatial streets. One of the victims of this creeping dereliction is the Neptune or Imperial Baths, which is now in imminent danger of collapse.
It's an absolute tragedy when you think that this used to be arguably the grandest spa resort in Europe. Now look at it. It's also an example of why privatization doesn't always work with an emerging economy, because under the communists this was maintained meticulously. It was spotless. And when Ceausescu was deposed, it fell into decay and disrepair. It was even sold to private companies several times, but they didn't have the funds to restore it, so it's now gone back into the hands of local government. But until they can come up with the money, it's going to continue to sit here and rot.
An edifice less likely to collapse anytime soon is this concrete leviathan. A communist-era construction that, like a Russian doll, hides deep in its belly a priceless treasure. The original Roman spa. A building within a building, these baths are almost unchanged from the days when legionaries and centurions alike immersed themselves in their healing waters. The fame of the springs was such that it spawned a legend from which the town took its name. Baile Herculani, or the Baths of Hercules, was alleged to be the place where the son of Zeus stopped to freshen up before heading off to tackle the Hydra. A fight so monumental that the serpent's death throes wrung great gouges from the bedrock, the evidence of which you can still see an hour's drive further upstream. For the majority of Herculani's residents, however, the easiest way to enjoy a thermal bath is to head to one of the communal open-air watering holes on the banks of the river. The surrounding hill country above Herculani is wild and solitary. With high rainfall and a filigree of streams, the local people still harness the power of water to help with the daily grind.
This really is the ultimate in sustainability. Serena brings her grain up here by cart. She grinds it using the water from the river, and then she transports the flour back to the village, again by hand, to feed her family and her pigs. At no point is any electricity or gasoline used in this process.
Being such an isolated area, communities still retain strong ties, and summer evenings are devoted to the serious business of nuptial revelry. It is the preservation of these cultural traditions that makes rural Romania such a unique place. With the rush to modernize, much of this may soon be lost, along with sustainable farming methods and a natural symbiosis with the landscape. The Carpathian foothills northeast of Herculani provide an ideal climate for the renaissance of an industry that was banned by the Dacians because of its detrimental effect on discipline, namely viticulture. Today, entrepreneur Șerban Dâmboviceanu is combining age-old agricultural methods and the latest technology with award-winning results.
The natural environment here makes a microclimate which is very good for the wine growing.
So the forest contributes to the flavour of the grapes?
Yes, exactly. Our vineyards are surrounded by very old natural forest, so this microclimate helps a lot in getting a very original taste. When we took over this place, we found only ruins after the communists, and we had to start again from zero. So we replanted again everything, and we renovated the cellars. In fact, at the beginning I was thinking this activity more like for a hobby, but there is a lot of hard work, and now it's taking all of my time.
And of course it provides employment for lots of the local people.
Yes, and this also brings me satisfaction to see those people having a job, and which gives them life back. And I see their children who like this, and maybe, who knows, they will start studying enology, because what we do here, we do for generations.
And what are your plans for the future?
We want to extend our cellars, and we plan to build guest rooms and also a new tasting room. It's very good for us to show to our customers how we grow the grapes, how we do the wines, and we want also to offer people, besides the visit of the vineyard and of the cellar, we want to visit the surroundings, which are very nice in the Carpathians. They are beautiful places to visit.
Heading across the southern arc of the Carpathians, we reach another spa town, where for years people have been harnessing the hot springs, not just for bathing, but to provide energy. Kalamanešt is a community edging ever closer to the ultimate goal of living entirely off the grid. An unlikely example of this is the venerable Kozia Monastery. Beneath its serene, picturesque exterior lurks an innovative heart that pumps and processes geothermal water to produce electricity and heat.
Zona este cunoscută de acum 2000 de ani, când romanii au venit și au lăsat castul roman în partea stângă a Oltului, care de fapt au găsit acolo, este la interferența Ardealului și cu țara românească, și acolo existau acele bărzi de sulf, de apă geotermală, dar care era la suprafață. Și într-adevăr și ei foloseau, după care locul acela a rămas până 80, când s-a construit barajul, care de fapt așa a acoperit apa respectivă, iar asupra izvoarelor minerale, cum se zic, acele curative, și-au pierdut din eficacitate care a fost originală, ea dinainte, până a fi cursul râului normal. Iar pe cealaltă linie este energia electrică, care este binevenită.
The rare beauty of the hills around Kalamanešt has had a strong spiritual significance since early Christian times.
It's amazing to think that for hundreds of years before the monasteries sprung up in this area, monks were coming to these grottos to meditate, to contemplate, and to live, eat, sleep, and spend their days communing with God in total isolation.
Rising heavenward above the River Olt is the Great Kozia National Park, containing some of the highest oak and beechwood forest in Europe. Although Romania's old-growth hardwood areas are particularly vulnerable to illegal logging, thanks to successful management and the vigilance of park wardens, this mountainside stands a good chance of remaining intact.
Pădurile sunt protejate, pot să spun chiar foarte bine, datorită faptului că avem o administrație profesionistă, însă în exteriorul parcului, pe zone destul de întinse, sunt probleme mari, pot să spun, în legătură cu defrișarea pădurilor, aspect care este produs în special de foștii proprietari care și-au redobândit pădurea înapoi. Cei care defrișează pădurile găsesc o mulțime de forme de ocolire a legii prin care își dobândesc documente, mai mult sau mai puțin legale, prin intermediul a o mulțime de firme românești sau străine și ajung să defrișeze pădurile de pe suprafețe destul de mari.
Travelling east again, you reach the roof of the Carpathians, where the mountains are at their most bleak and breathtaking. Here, the serpentine Transalpina coils around cliffs and snow-capped peaks, providing one of the most beautiful and precipitous drives in Romania. It is from these lofty heights that you can truly see the scale of the wilderness. This sea of green that stretches to the horizon contains Europe's last great expanse of pristine forest. Sadly, you can also see the extent of its ongoing destruction. Below the tree line, much of the forest has already been lost, in large part due to the restitution of land to private individuals who then harvest the wood or sell on the logging rights. I am on my way to meet one of the most outspoken of these landowners, a well-known figure who works tirelessly to address this and many other social problems. Princess Margarita of Romania.
Restitution and private property, for me anyway, this is where I'm coming from, is absolutely essential to a modern democratic state. But having said that, I think that the restitution process was badly done. First of all, it was done in dribs and drabs. It was done in a chaotic manner, and it's led to chaos, just what you're talking about, the deforestation, corruption, selling of wood on the black market, illegal logging. If people can get away with wreaking absolute havoc, then they're going to keep doing it. First of all, you need a good legislative framework, you need a good body to enforce that, and then you need sanctions and incentives, obviously. You're not going to just punish people, it's ridiculous. And there are quite good laws, but they're not respected and they're not enforced. This has to be done if we want to get anywhere. But it's also to do with attitudes and education. Unless people are really educated to respect nature, and I think a lot of our children do have that respect. If you don't have respect for one another, you don't have respect for nature or for the elderly people who've been very, very badly treated here. Once you're over 50, you're finished. I mean, it's just go out to pasture. So my foundation is linking the old and the very young in all sorts of activities together, and they're learning from each other and they both value each other, and I think this is a vital importance. And a lot of people said to me, you can't raise money for your foundation because old people are not sexy. But in fact, the amount of knowledge that the children get from them are extraordinary, and there's a huge spark of energy that comes out of that connection between the generations.
Do you think it's possible for people living on the edges of the forest to have a sustainable livelihood from the forest itself?
Yes, I do. If you set in place a proper policy and proper rules and regulations that people who can work from crafts, from cultural tourism, agrotourism, etc., this is something that can definitely allow people to make a living out of their land. And it has to be done because forests in Romania should be a strategic development point in the whole of Romania. It's not something that can be used up, because once it's used up, it's gone. It could be the best brand Romania has. There's no choice. Either you do it or it's the end of everything. And it's absolutely vital to the future of Romania.
One area that is thankfully now protected from hunting and logging is the Buceci Natural Park, a short drive from Brașov. For an overview, the more intrepid can hire a microlight tour of the surrounding wilderness. Not necessarily something to do on a full stomach, however. But for full immersion, the only way to properly appreciate this vertiginous paradise is to pull on your walking boots and head out on one of the many trails that crisscross its rugged slopes. To keep me on the straight and narrow, I was joined by guide Oana Mihai and a team of local rangers.
They are very careful about this area. They do not allow to cut trees. Animals are protected, and nature is in its wild form.
So there's no hunting here at all?
No
Not even
hunting.
in a limited, sustainable
No,
way?
no
Nothing.
hunting, nothing.
I wish more areas of the Carpathians were like this.
It would be lovely, because here the nature is in its purest form.
The ecosystem regulates itself.
Yes, it is not interrupted by humans.
Do you think this is the way forward for this part of Romania, that by attracting people here for adventure tourism and hiking, that it will provide a sustainable income for the people who live here?
Definitely, because we have the place that allows us to do adventure tourism here, and people really need this money coming from tourism.
Hiking through pristine forest, past alpine meadows and razor-sharp crags, you are once again overwhelmed by how fragile and unbelievably precious this landscape is. The main base for exploring Buceci is Bran, which is dominated by an impressive Gothic castle. A popular spot for Draculophiles, despite its origins as a minor border keep, with no connection to Vlad the Impaler whatsoever. Bran is a good example of a historic town at risk of being spoiled by a tsunami of incongruous development. Thankfully, there are exceptions to this rule, the most notable being Balaban, a truly spectacular lodge, high on the hills above town, built by visionary environmentalist and filmmaker Dan Dimitrescu.
Well, this is kind of a little mini miracle. I've been coming to Romania for many times now since the 1990s, and on one little trip I came on this hilltop and just fell in love with it. But there's a bit more to it than that, because my family originated not far from here, about 30 miles south in the Carpathians, and we have a long history of land ownership there, so this was kind of like coming back home.
And did you originally start with the idea to build a hotel?
I was thinking of building something, and the connection that was kind of interesting to me, I came here in 1968 working for National Geographic on a story where I walked from the Ukraine to the Black Sea with colleagues, and we did a story on the Carpathians in 1968. We came around here and I sketched a little building in my notebook, and by a miracle that building was taken to Sibiu, to the Ethnographic Museum. I saw it, and this is a carbon copy of that building that I sketched in 1968. And I'm a kind of an aficionado of architecture, and when I see these buildings I see a very beautiful, elegant design, almost Japanese in elegance. So there's been a lot of pleasure creating this. The most important part was that we had craftsmen from Svente Gheorghe, which is the Hungarian-Romanian community not far from here, who know how to work with wood. And they were very good craftsmen, very good craftsmen. The Carpathians are beautiful mountains. But one thing that's gone wrong is that as people have new money, they build houses very quickly, and cement is the preferred material. It's cheap, you can do it fast, and there's a kind of a creeping cement culture. And it's been very difficult, at least with Romanian friends, to persuade them that peasant or local architecture is the right way to go, that it can be modernized. Because there's still that memory of ancient peasant homes with the animals and the smells and all of that. So I think we're, right now in these years, we're beginning to see the bit of a shift where Romanians are realizing that there's something pleasant about this, and that the modern concrete building may not be the most comfortable environment.
It's places like Balaban that are at the forefront of cultural tourism in Romania and represent one of its best hopes for the future. The capital of this area is Brașov, a vibrant city with great cafes and restaurants, beautiful churches, and a dramatic, if slightly derivative, backdrop. From here, you can head north to experience Transylvania's Saxon communities. The chief of these is Sighișoara, one of the country's most visited attractions and the alleged birthplace of Vlad Tepes. Founded during the 12th century, Sighișoara is widely regarded as among the best preserved medieval citadels in Europe, and one that has never been conquered. Fed by its own wells and enclosed with gigantic walled towers, these ancient houses, churches, and cobbled streets remain locked in time. Each of its 14 towers were built and maintained by a guild. Among the most striking is the clock tower, which controlled the central gate and stored the city's treasures. Today, 9 of these towers are still standing, and one charity is working to repair and preserve them by returning them to the crafts and guilds responsible for their construction.
The Mihai Eminescu Trust is an organization that works to preserve the cultural heritage and the identity of the villages in Transylvania mainly. I'm talking mostly about the former Saxon villages. It took this name because Mihai Eminescu is, as you may know, the Romanian national poet. And what the Trust and himself have in common is the idea of preserving our national identity.
And this is primarily within the Saxon areas of Transylvania?
Most of all, we work in the counties of Brașov, Sibiu and Mureș. And we're working in the villages that were populated by Saxons who most of them left after the revolution and who were then repopulated by Romanian and Roma population. But also we're working in Sighișoara, where again we're trying to touch the architectural heritage, the tower that you're seeing here, as well as the natural heritage.
But it's not just about preserving the buildings, the architecture itself, is it?
It's not. One thing that is specific to Romania and it makes us proud is that this architecture, this wonderful nature is lived. The human communities are very much alive everywhere, and the Trust is trying to preserve this as it is, to give people an opportunity to have a good social, economic and cultural life here, not to live for the bigger cities, not to live abroad. Our intention would be to have in time in Sighișoara a craftsman working in every tower.
Sighișoara may be an impressive place by day, but at night it becomes something else entirely.
I know that Romanians are fed up with references to Dracula and Nosferatu, but standing here in what is arguably the birthplace of Vlad the Impaler, one of the oldest citadels in Europe, and seeing the glistening flagstones in the darkness between pools of lamplight, you do feel as if you've somehow stumbled into a Gothic horror.
As we continue our journey towards the coast, the mountains give way to lush pasture and rich agricultural land, once again ideal for Romania's burgeoning wine industry. Further southeast, the foothills melt away completely, and one increasingly encounters a different kind of wilderness. When Romania joined the EU, many of the old ineligible factories, hastily built under communism, had to be abandoned. Today, they are slowly rusting and crumbling back into the ground, providing an unlikely haven for wildlife. Here in Kalarash, the old steelworks serve as a backdrop to what has become a vibrant wetland and a sanctuary for birds.
Might not be to everybody's taste, but I think there's something profoundly beautiful about this post-industrial scene because it represents a rare example of nature reclaiming the landscape from man.
The water that flows out of the Kalarash lakes continues a short distance to merge with the Danube. Now even larger than when we saw it last, and thanks to the vast alluvial plain it has to cross to reach the coast, about to undergo a dramatic transformation.
As it nears the sea, the Danube divides into a labyrinth of channels, a vast reserve designated by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. If Ceausescu had had his way, all of this would have been drained and converted into farmland. Instead, it remains the largest wetland area in Europe and one of the most biodiverse regions on the planet.
The Danube Delta has been described as the Amazon of Europe. 2,200 square miles of rivers, canals, marshes, reed-fringed lakes and sandy islands. This euliginous Eden harbours over 300 species of bird and 45 different types of freshwater fish, providing a critical habitat for many endangered animals and plants. A multitude of people come here every summer to savour life on the water and sample the Delta's unique cuisine, and restaurants and hotels like this one, situated on the banks of the Salina Canal.
Gabi, this is all traditional local food from the Danube Delta, yeah?
Yeah, sure. The name is Chorba of Storchak, of som. This is a som. This is a very expensive fish here.
Fish?
Yeah.
The som means sleepy fish, yes?
Sleepy fish, yes.
Okay. So it's very lazy.
To translate, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very, very,
Yeah.
very lazy, yeah. It's very important, traditional chorba, to have a lot of fish. This much. And now to see another fish, this is carp.
You see, this is a sport fish in England.
Yeah.
You don't eat carp.
But in Romanian, it's very good fish to eat, yeah?
Why did you decide to come to the Delta?
Because it's wonderful here. This is paradise here. The heat is very...
The food is amazing.
Yes.
Absolutely.
One of the most beautiful parts of the Delta is Letia Forest, the oldest national park in Romania, located between the Salina and Chilia branches of the Danube. Access is by horse and cart from Letia village, a community that can trace its ancestry back to the Lipovan immigrants who came here over 200 years ago to escape persecution by the Russian Orthodox Church. This is the most northern subtropical forest in Europe. It's the habitat of a plethora of fauna, the largest being the Danube Delta horse, subject of much recent debate following its unscheduled release in the wake of communism. Environmentalist Liviu Mihaiu has been campaigning to highlight the impact of this invasive species.
I know there's been a lot of controversy about this issue. Some people have said they should be culled, other people say they should be allowed to roam free here in the forest, but there has been an impact, hasn't there? Already a visible impact.
Yes, the specialists saw this impact on the trees, on the species, and maybe in 10 or 20 years will be a mess for this unique forest. You know, it might be irreparable damage to the ecosystem. They are not to be slaughtered, they are to be relocated. maybe 100 of these horses maybe remain here for the tourists. And maybe one day we'll have a Romanian Mustang, you know, in this forest after 5 or 6 maybe generations, you know.
Of course. The traditional way of life here in the Danube Delta, as with other remote corners of Romania, remains largely uninterrupted. Man living in harmony with nature. Although sadly that is beginning to change.
The biggest influence, both in terms of its destruction or salvation, once again is us. The exodus of inhabitants is dwarfed by the annual influx of tourists. As with some areas we've seen, unsympathetic development is burgeoning, while riverbanks and waterways are being damaged by speeding traffic. But there are people and organisations working to save this watery paradise. Like an initiative to encourage a more harmonious approach to exploring the Delta. I caught up with founder and former Olympic canoeist Ivan Pitsaikin, for whom this region has always had a personal significance.
Copilăria mea a fost frumoasă. De mic, primul lucru pe care mi-l aduc aminte că m-am trezit într-o dimineață în baltă cu bunicul meu. Eram în vârful bărcii, așa. Și asta mi-a rămas foarte plăcut, impresionant. Școala, îmi plăcea la școală să merg, pentru că de foarte multe ori la școală trebuia să mă deplasez cu barca. Toate lucrurile astea erau pentru mine normale, iar nicio clipă nu m-am gândit că voi ajunge și în sport.
So now you've moved back here and you're involved in various projects. What are you doing?
Este proiectul România care promovează un turism lent, care promovează tradițiile și cultura din zonă, protejează și natura. Așteptăm și turiști care să respecte această frumusețe de
Toro, you're working with Ivan on this, yes?
Yes, and it's a great honor for me. One of the targets of our project is to bring tourists which is interested about what the nature and the local people can offer without any special investment. And this is the reason why Ivan and me, we are not trying just to promote the ecotourism. We are also trying to build partnership with associations which can bring know-how. And I think if we put on the same level the need of infrastructure with the need of protecting nature, and we will invest the same amount of energy, money and pride in this, I think we can solve this problem.
Despite its natural beauty, the Danube Delta is one of Romania's poorest regions, with some local communities lacking even basic services, such as electricity, running water and waste collection. Many of the inhabitants rely on subsistence agriculture and fishing, with communities depending on the summer months to generate sufficient income to survive through the winter. While the Delta still has an abundant supply of fish, numbers are declining rapidly due to overfishing and systemic poaching. Today, 5 out of the 6 species native to this region are listed as critically endangered. Standing between them and extinction is the last line of defense, the people whose job it is to protect this fragile ecosystem.
This is Fiorel and Vasily. They're part of the Delta police team. Their job is to come out here at night and try to catch the poachers, which is not an easy task, particularly as they're understaffed and they lack a decent budget to be able to do it.
As dawn breaks, we join one of the other teams out on patrol. Tensions are high as news comes through of a potential sighting.
This guy looks like he's a legitimate fisherman. So the next thing is they take his details down and then go back and check them at the station. But even if he is legitimate, you still have to work out whether they're taking the quota or not.
Toată lupta niciodată nu o să câștigăm, pentru că apar din generație în generație, peștele e o sursă de venit și dintotdeauna a fost un mijloc de îmbogățire rapidă, așa cum. În cadrul serviciului suntem 30 de lucrători, ne-ar trebui mult mai mulți, dar pentru a forma un om să lucreze pe linia asta de muncă e foarte greu, pentru că delta Dunării are o întindere foarte mare, o suprafață foarte mare și fiecare ar trebui să cunoască exact zonele în care lucrează, în care își desfășoară activitatea.
Moments later, we have another sighting. The team roars into action. We could hear the distant hum of an engine, but it was proving difficult to pinpoint its location. With hundreds of square miles of overgrown waterways, this can be mission impossible.
Why do you think that guy got away?
Apa mică, vegetația deasă, au bărcuțe mai mici. În general, mai la fiecare acțiune venim cu rezultate.
One of the greatest challenges is that the police are still seen by many as the bad guys. Being a tight-knit community, everyone talks to each other, so the moment they hear a patrol, they pick up the phone and tip off their friends.
Cea mai mare problemă pentru noi chestia asta, pentru că inclusiv pescari autorizați, cu toate că braconierii le iau peștele de la gură, să zic așa, cu toate astea nu ne ajută prea mult, din contră chiar îi anunță de câte ori ieșim în teren și unde suntem. Cred eu ar fi indicat să interzică pescuitul în delta Dunării o perioadă de timp ca să rupă acest lanț, pentru că fenomenul ăsta să merge de la o generație la alta și pentru că în delta nu prea sunt alte surse de venit, toată lumea recurge la pescuit și, bineînțeles, la braconaj.
There must be some element of risk to what you do. I mean, it's a dangerous job at times, isn't it?
Da, este destul de periculos. Am avut situații când am fost atacați în timp ce adunam sculele braconierilor, dar ne-am făcut datoria și nu ne-am lăsat.
N-am dat înapoi și braconierii trebuie să înțeleagă chestia asta, că nu o să dăm niciodată înapoi.
Tourism is now providing an alternative livelihood for many inhabitants of the Delta. And encouragingly, more environmentally conscious hotels are springing up amongst the reeds. I spoke to the founder of one of the first.
GB, how long have you been living here in the area?
Yeah, I started for 10 years ago, walking and travel around the area, the Dobroja country, and I get an inspiration from the peasants' houses. And I like to continue the traditions, you know. I build the houses and the walls is the yellow clay, and of course with the roofs, the reeds roof, you know.
What I find constantly surprising is that despite the fact this is quite an inhospitable landscape at times, there is such a rich convergence of history here.
You know, the first one was the Greeks, we have the Romans, after that the Turks, and if you look there to the right side, you know, the road, you know, is the Silk Road. The Silk Road to Krakow and to Lviv, which was a very important cities.
Getting out on the water and seeing the wildlife may be one of the chief reasons for visiting the Delta, but the cultural landscape is equally compelling. Like the medieval villages of the Carpathians, the traditional way of life has endured here, unchanged for hundreds of years.
I love the fact the boats are so old and well maintained. I mean, you can see that one's been patched up there.
Those boats are typical fishermen's boats, lipovans, the Russian fishermen, you know. And how you see, you know, they put two boats together, you know, when they take the nets off from the water, you know, it's like a real catamaran.
Yeah, they
boats,
stabilise
yeah.
them.
Very stabilised.
Clearly they can't do this all year round, because looking at the amount of fish they're pulling out, if they did that every day, there wouldn't be any fish left in the lake. I mean, how long does the fishing season last?
It's a special situation with this lake. It's called a Babadag lake. The fishing season is all year season. The guys from here have a special fish farm for the small fishes, you know.
So they're constantly restocking the lake with young fish.
Yes.
How often do these guys come out here?
They are coming daily, except on Sunday. They start rather early in the morning, 3:30, 4 o'clock. They already get a breakfast around 6 o'clock, you know, and around 10 o'clock they have a fisherman soup. It's been their lunchtime.
And they make that out here?
Yeah, they make it there in their boat. It's an old tradition. Bon appetit, Charlie.
Yes. Oh, that's sensational.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I know they eat this every day, 365 days a year, but I wouldn't get tired of it. It's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, they're really strong and slim guys, you know. You can see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the taste, you know, is the water lake, you know.
Well, there's so many fish in this lake, it seems that the water's probably like a natural fish stock anyway. So, not so sure about the brandy, but
Not the
would they
brandy.
be having brandy at this time of the morning?
You know, they start to have a brandy very early in the morning and very late in the night time, you know.
Well, of course, they're Russians,
that is
so.
typical Russian tradition, you know, to enjoy the vodka. You know.
Another important aspect of Russian-Romanian culture is music and dancing, as Gibi and I were lucky enough to witness that evening. As the delta finally merges with the Black Sea, this part of our journey comes to a close. Over the last hour, we have seen many contrasting environments, all of which are fragile, stunning, and irreplaceable. Romania is a country of epic beauty, boasting Europe's largest surviving area of virgin forest and its greatest wetland. But these are not just worth preserving for dry academic reasons.
It's landscapes like the Danube Delta and this one here in the Carpathians that could ensure a lasting prosperity for the people of Romania. If they're properly protected and managed, then they'll become an inspiration and an example to the rest of the world. However, if the rivers are polluted and the forests felled at their current rate, then this whole region will resemble that hillside behind me, as bleak and ecologically barren as Snowdonia or the Highlands of Scotland. Romania holds one of the planet's most valuable natural treasures, a vast wilderness of towering mountain peaks and pristine forests that provide a habitat for thousands of species of flora and fauna. As we've seen in previous episodes of Wild Carpathia, this priceless ecosystem is under threat from man, but still remains probably the most unspoilt region in Europe. In this, the final part in our trilogy, we'll be travelling north from Transylvania to explore the historic Maramureș, a landscape rich in culture, where the old ways are jealously guarded and medieval traditions coexist alongside modern life. We'll experience more of the country's stunning national parks, take a steam ride through the mountains and pay a visit to Bukovina's inspirational painted monasteries,
which serve as a canvas for some of the finest examples of religious art in the world. On the way, we'll be looking at how culture, adventure and ecotourism could provide an alternative solution to stem the flow of illegal wood that pours out of Romania and offer a more stable and long-term income for its rural populations. If you're going to explore the far north of Romania, it's a good idea to start your journey from Cluj, a buzzing town which owes its renaissance to the spirit of creativity. As we'll see, these remote landscapes have been inspiring music and art for millennia, and Cluj has become the hub for a new wave of painters and artisans whose bohemian studios here in the old paintbrush factory underplay the stir they're causing on the international art scene. Also worth seeing are the extensive botanical gardens dating back to 1872, which house a huge collection of rare species of plant, but more importantly, provide an insight into this region's native flora. The Maramureș is a region famed for its cultural integrity. Ancient wooden villages and churches, the likes of which you won't find anywhere else, cluster around the rolling foothills of the Carpathians and offer a vital bridge between past and present. Skills and techniques for working with wood are preserved and nurtured and enable the continuation of a historic architecture and design unparalleled in other parts of the country. While existence is tough here, with baking hot summers and Siberian winters, the people of the Maramureș have a decidedly upbeat attitude to life and its cessation. This is the Happy Cemetery in Săpunța, less of a graveyard and more of a tribute to the people who lived here.
What's so wonderful about this cemetery is that it's not about death, it's a celebration of life, of people's stories. Listen to this. Under this heavy cross, my poor mother-in-law rests. 3 more days she would have lived. I would rest and she would read. You who are passing by, not to wake her, please try, because if she comes back home, she'll criticize me more. But I'll behave so well that she'll not return from there. You who are reading this, don't get into trouble as I did. Find a good mother-in-law and live in harmony with her. Wise words.
To truly experience the Maramureș, you need to immerse yourself in its traditions. Religious festivals play a pivotal role in the annual calendar, with celebrations taking part in different villages throughout the year.
În Sfântul cel mai presus de ceruri și duhovnicescul său jertfelnic, într-un miros de bună mireasmă duhovnicească, ne trimite nouă Dumnezeescul har și darul Sfântului Duh să ne rugăm.
During the summer months, perhaps the most common reason for communities to come together, as with other parts of the world, is to attend a wedding. Although here, they do things a bit differently, as I found out when I joined renowned folk singer and poet Grigore Leșe.
Charlie, am ajuns în sat Șugătar, la nuntă. Încă Maramureș să mai țin nunțile astea. Ia, femeile bătrâni spun la porți, copiii mici în brață, Uite aici oamenii de bine rău sunt îmbrăcați, ceterași-s ceterași, cântă, mai rău, dar cântă. La mireasă să cântă, femeile așteaptă, părinții asta ce? Minte n-aș vine mirile după ea în casă, să o iei de la părinți și o duce la el acasă, adică mireasă de-am înainte, cărările ți-s oprite. Se pune întrebarea, Doamne, ori merită să mai investim în asta, în cultura tradițională? Eu zic că se merită. Până la urmă, oamenii înțeleg, ia, se adună, au străiți, uite, cojoace, iată, clopuri, horinca e horincă, de 100 de focuri. Să aibă tinerii noroc, să aibă tinerii noroc. Charlie, aceea ta!
Noroc!
Ia!
Ia?
Hai să mergem să vedem mireasa.
Hai, și iară, hai! Mândra mătușă mării, las trăim dacă ai sosit!
Eventually, the groom arrives with his family and the other men of the village to pick out his fiancée from the assembled womenfolk. And at long last, everyone can make their way down to the church to formalise the arrangement. Music not only comprises a vital part of communal events like these, but it also documents and defines the place it originates from. It can evoke the spirit of the landscape it was born in, reflect the voice of its people, and help safeguard their history and identity for generations to come. Grigore explained more as we visited the village where he grew up.
Aici venim vara, venim iarna, îmi făcea săniuță iarna, mă jucam până pomni ăștia, până copaci și horem și mă încercam glasul. Mă auzi vecinii, până sat și opre pe mama și zicea, tu năstăsâie tu, a tău e copilul. Am eu dar, hei, zice, da horește. Hei, că dragostile cele mari dai, da. Hai că stau în drău, stau în drău, ca doi pândari. Ce mai mare minune pe lumea asta îi horitul. Că horea te scoate din suferință, îți dă nădejdea și te face fericit. Eu astăzi sunt fericit că sunteți pe grădina strămoșilor mei. Aici, încă cenușa vieții e aici, cenușa lor e aici. Eu viu cu horea asta și îi aduc. De astăzi, din seara asta, când soarele se pregătește să se ducă la culcare, sunteți în inima mea. De n-aș cânta, doar aș muri.
The floral meadows, orchards and lush pastures of the Maramureș provide an ideal environment for apiculture. Here, bee numbers are thriving thanks to an absence of large-scale intensive agriculture and the commensurate use of pesticides and chemical fertilizers. Nomadic beekeepers still remain a common sight on roadsides, their trucks laden with hives and their wares on sale to passing travelers.
How did you first get into beekeeping?
Părinții mei
aveau albine. A fost și este o îndeletnicire foarte plăcută și foarte utilă și numai în natură și iubesc natura ca pe cei mai sfânti.
I've been stung twice in the last couple of minutes. How do you avoid getting stung the whole time?
Da. Și eu mușcat. 50-60 de albini pe zi. Foarte sănătos veninul de albine. Subțiază sângele. Primul cules e acela noi la pomii fructiferi. După aia mergem la cules la rapiță. După aia mergem la cules la salcâm. După aia ne reîntoarcem acasă la polifloră. Și după aia mergem la floarea soarelui, pe care le pregătim pentru iernat.
Can we have a look inside?
Da, o să vă arăt acum. Fum de asta le calmăm. Am stors acum de 2 săptămâni, acum iară să plinesc ramele. Familiile sunt puternice și este cules. Bun, să vedem, miere proaspătă, asta e băgată de azi. Acum o să gustați.
Super.
Organic.
Organic. Is there a way of protecting the bees, given the fact that fertilizers and pesticides are being used more and more, even here in Romania?
Deocamdată în România e foarte greu de a proteja albinele, pentru că parcelele de pământ sunt foarte mici și fiecare face cu pământul lui ceea ce vrea. Ar trebui făcute niște asociații puternice și acționat pentru oprirea folosirii pesticidelor. Să se folosească produse organice la tratamentele plantelor. Deci dacă se continuă așa, ne omoară albinele la noi, la stupări.
In response to the march of cement culture, several organisations have sprung up to educate and train new artisans in the necessary skills to help preserve the architectural landscape of the Maramureș, like this project in the hills south of Baia Mare.
Am observat că casele vechi, tradiționale românești de lemn, dispar de peste tot în țară și am încercat să facem un spațiu în care să îmbinăm nou cu vechiul.
So in effect you're building a small community here.
Da, practic vrem să transformăm un loc într-un loc de evenimente culturale, să aducem tineretul să învețe elemente tradiționale românești, tehnici de reparație a caselor și tot ce ține de case vechi și case noi.
Along with initiatives like these, the Maramureș is waking up to the need for authentic places to stay, combining old world ambience with creature comforts. A good example is this eco-lodge nearby a spree, owned by sculptor and potter Daniel Leș, who has rediscovered ceramic techniques dating back to the early Dacians and uses them to weird and wonderful effect. That evening I was joined by friend and singer Loredana Groza, whose reinterpretation of Romanian folk roots has inspired a new generation.
It's such a pleasure. I don't know why I'm so lucky to be here with you guys.
It's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, we're right in the heart of the mountains here.
It's nothing like reality, you know, like seeing and touching and smelling.
Smelling, talking of which.
Yeah, oh, look what we have here.
We have the traditional
soup, here it's a traditional dish. It's cooked very Hajduk style or Robin Hood style. It's made of meat, of course, and vegetables and secret ingredients. Okay. It's a sour soup, like a chorba. Since I was a child, my mom used to give us at noon and sometimes even at dinner this kind of chorba. It's very good because it's light and also it fills you, which is good when you have to learn, to work, to travel and to create. And my music is inspired of old Romanian songs and Romanian rhythms, and I'm trying to make them understandable to the younger generations. Sometimes when you're a teenager, you think everything that your mom or your dad is listening to is a little bit old-fashioned or uncool. And what I'm doing is trying to connect all these ages, because all these lands, they have their own music, their own sound. And every generation put their imagination and their soul and creativity, and we are living on the shoulders of our ancestors.
As you say, you've travelled the world, and I've noticed there's something quite unique about Romanian culture. It's the way that people still embrace and treasure their past traditions and their culture and their heritage here.
It's kind of a pride, I can say, but we have to make it even bigger, because sometimes when you live in paradise, you're not aware anymore of the treasure of what you're living. This is a song which I like very, very much. It's from Ardeal, from Transylvania. It's called Ana Zorile se varsă. Ana, zorile se varsă, de seară mă întorc acasă la copii și la nevastă. Oh, Ana, zorile se varsă. And now, Moldavia, because I'm from Moldavia. Păi trandafiri, Moldova te-aș iubi, dar nu știu vorba. Hei, hei, hei! Păi trandafiri, din la Moldova te-aș iubi, dar nu știu vorba. Lunca-i luncă, iarba-i verde, ce-am iubit nu se mai vede. Ce-a fost verde s-a uscat, măi, ce-am iubit s-a scuturat, măi. Lunca-i luncă, iarba-i verde, ce-am iubit nu se mai vede. Ce-a fost verde s-a uscat, măi, Charlie, ce-am iubit s-a scuturat, măi.
For our final musical destination, the Maramureș, we deferred to famous local band Iza and Grigore for what soon became a typical Romanian knees-up, and one that lasted well into the next day. Travelling southeast, you approach the wild border between Romania and the Ukraine. Here, in places, the forest has been heavily depleted by illegal logging. But one area now managed sustainably is the Vasa Valley, thanks in part to an expert team of rangers. Admittedly, the job is made easier by an almost total absence of road access, which is why, if you want to head up into the mountains, you need to take the train. Starting from the town of Vișeu de Sus, the Mocanitsa steam engine, which used to transport lumber, provides a spectacular way to experience the wilderness without the need for a compass and walking boots. East of the Maramuresh, you reach Bukovina, or northern Moldavia, which during the Middle Ages formed a religious buffer zone between Islam, courtesy of the Ottoman Empire, and Christianity. This is one reason why Bukovina, or land covered by beech forests, harbours such a profusion of monasteries and churches, many built by Stephen the Great to celebrate his victories on the battlefield and to strengthen religious ties. But it only goes part of the way to explaining why a number of these exhibit intricate murals on the outside as well as the interior walls. The famous painted monasteries of Bukovina are exceptional examples of Byzantine art, and almost all of them have now been classified UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Ostensibly, the purpose of such elaborate frescoes was to make the story of the Bible and the lives of the saints accessible to less literate members of the community. But there are deeper spiritual reasons, as I discovered when I spoke to religious historian Father Gabriel Heria, whose local parish incorporates the Church of Patrauds.
Our churches was built like heaven gates, not only for the people who go in every Sunday to the church. This heaven gate was built for all the people, from all the people who are here, who are around, for all the nature. And it's easy to show this if you paint church outside. But these churches are not simple museums. The greatest treasure of Bukovina are the people who live in proximity. They order their life in harmony with the spiritual truth in the architecture and in the paintings of this church. The tourists, the visitors, can learn from these people how they can speak with God. And the painters painted the church outside like inside to show the connection between church and all the nature.
Preserving and restoring these incredible monuments is a full-time job, with a lot of the murals, both inside and out, having been damaged or destroyed by man or the march of time, as is apparent on churches like this one at Probata.
Despite the protective roof that's so characteristic of all these painted churches, you can still see the effect of the elements. This is the north-facing side of the church, and here the frescoes have almost disappeared entirely.
Inside, however, Probata has perhaps the best examples of medieval mural painting in Bukovina. These images have been painstakingly reclaimed by experts who labour all year round to recover the original definition and colour from walls either plastered over or simply lost behind centuries of smoke and grime. I visited the monastery of Sucevica, where work is still underway. Must be a very rewarding job to watch the wall you're working on just get brighter and brighter as you reveal more of the colour.
Yes, it's an amazing job, and the most rewarding thing is when you remove the scaffold at the end of your work here, and you see all the surface cleaned and finished, so it's really nice. For the moment, I'm removing the deposits of dust. As a rule, we try to use the substance according to the sensitive of the pigments.
It's really effective, isn't it? I mean, the way the grey comes out here, it looks like it's just been painted again.
We are lucky
the
here.
The contrast is fantastic, isn't it?
Yes, it's true.
Today, the Moldavian landscape has been at least partially tamed, and some of its larger fauna lost. But one organisation is in the process of reintroducing the most emblematic, European bison, in a bid to re-establish the original balance of nature.
They know we're here, don't they?
Yes, for sure. If you see some cows looking to us very carefully, but it's still no danger for them because their tail move in a normal way.
When they decide to run, the tails go up, yes?
The tails go up, and it's a sign for all the herd, and everyone will start to run in the opposite direction.
That's the alarm signal?
Yes.
Like a rabbit when it bangs its foot on the
Indeed.
ground. Well, let's see how close we get before that happens.
We can try.
Or we get charged.
No.
They don't charge
for
you,
sure.
do they?
No.
No?
No, for sure.
Oh, it's free.
It's for free.
It's for free.
It's once. One shot.
The rewilding process, I mean, will these be released into the true wild?
For sure. In next spring, another 5 will get into the wild.
And you think that they will be able to coexist perfectly happily with the modern landscape, with man?
Yes, especially in the areas where people are habituated to use the landscape and the natural resources in a sustainable way. It's a success story.
What benefits do they bring to an ecosystem like this?
They keep the balance between forest areas and open areas.
So they kind of keep the borders of the forest and the pasture as they are and separate.
Yes, and because of bison, a lot of other species can live. And speaking about bugs, birds, the succession of species can be controlled in a natural way.
That can't be very good for the tree.
The bison just take a small strip of bark and then let the tree and go to another tree. So no problem for the tree.
It is incredible. I mean, he's eating that like spaghetti.
Yes, they succeed to debark to 3 or 4 meters high.
Very clever.
Very clever. And they simply learn.
How did the locals feel about what you're doing here?
They was announced at the beginning of a reintroduction program, and it was a period of consultation, and all of them agreed. And nowadays they simply like this idea. It's become some kind of concept for the sustainable development of the area.
And also it's something that not only contributes to the biodiversity, or should we say reinstates the biodiversity that was here before, but helps with local tourism, brings people into the area.
Yes, already tourists started to come to see the wild bison, to see the semi-free bison. Also we have the local handicraftsmen started to produce some articles related with bison.
And of course it also represents a renaissance for the symbol of Moldavia.
Yes, not only just the renaissance of a symbol, but what is related with. So we expect to have good behaviors, morals, people.
And greater social solidarity, perhaps.
We hope.
The Kalaman Mountains south of Bukovina cover an area of about 2,000 square kilometres and form a massive andesitic barrier between Moldavia and Transylvania, cradling the biggest extinct volcanic crater in Europe. Past eruptions have helped shape an otherworldly vista and make it one of Romania's most breathtaking national parks. Its signature landmark is a series of igneous pillars, known as the 12 Apostles, which preside over the surrounding valleys and afford truly memorable views. The park management is adopting a refreshingly proactive attitude to the growing numbers, taking advantage of this natural adventure playground.
The visitor center is built for children education and for tourists. The park is special because here is one of the most important wilderness in Romania. We have here a large conifer forest, many animals, birds, wolves, lynx. We have here the beautiful reservation like 12 Apostles Geological Reservation. In the park, it's no hunting, no deforestation, so the animals it's safe and the ecosystem is protected. Ecotourism brings the money for the community, and it is a good alternative for the traditional forest exploitation.
With the influx of visitors, many local people are making the transition from farming and forestry into ecotourism. Happily, there is now an organisation helping them to do this, with clear advice and a certification process to ensure their efforts contribute to, rather than denigrate, the natural surroundings.
Our organization is promoting and implementing ecotourism in Romania, so we work both at the national and regional level, and we work with businesses as well. So on the national and regional level, we promote and implement the concept of ecotourist destination. It's an opportunity for local communities through ecotourism to develop small-scale businesses based on the nature and the rural culture. So we look for those businesses that have chances to become more responsible, and we implement a certification scheme, and those certified businesses, they have a good chance in order to create local networks. And these networks as well are important to maximize the benefits to the local community. So when one tourist spends €1 in such a guest house, this €1 is not anymore €1, maybe it's valued €3 or €4 because it's wisely distributed to the community.
Heading south through the Bicas Gorge and over the mountains, we cross into Transylvania once again, where new enterprises are underway to exploit this rising demand for eco-friendly travel. Like a scheme to build over 100 kilometers of cycle paths, linking together some of the most important Saxon villages.
We have a large number of cyclists in Romania, and they don't have proper trails. Even in the mountains we have forestry roads, but they're not proper marked, they're not proper maintained. So the plan is by the end of 2014 to have 100 kilometers of new trails to link all the Saxon villages with Sighișoara. The shortest trail will be like 5 kilometers, the longest will be between Viscri and Sighișoara. This trail will follow the ridge, and it will be quite easy to ride on it, in order for tourists to be able to use by themselves the trails without necessarily a guide. The idea is to attract more and responsible tourists here, people interested in nature and culture, people who like to have nice trails, good food, good accommodation, nice people. We want to start this project to be the first one. It is the first one in Romania, and we want to give an example. So we'll create a brochure for the trail, a map, but also a best practice guide in order for others to be easier to build and to find a way to discuss with the land managers the best way and the best route for these trails.
Romania is facing a crossroads. Its two greatest natural treasures, its forest and its medieval landscapes, are in danger of being lost due to uncensored modernization and illegal logging. Huge tracts of land have already been destroyed by the reckless greed of those prepared to sacrifice their legacy for financial gain. The extent of this problem can be clearly seen in and around the Fagarash Mountains. But it's not too late. There are those who are working tirelessly to save this crucial ecosystem. I caught up with one organisation hoping to link the Fagarash Natura 2000 site with adjoining national parks and areas of private land to safeguard remaining sections of pristine forest and create what might hopefully become the biggest wilderness reserve in Europe.
That is quite a specimen. Elm tree, yeah?
Yes, it is a mountain elm. I saw a similar one in the Semenik National Park, in the old growth forest, and it was about 400 years old. So this one probably has the same age.
So this elm was quite fortunate it didn't get cut down?
It was lucky because now it's part of a protected area and it is part of the property that FCC bought for conservation. So he will live as long as he can.
nature dictates, basically.
As he can, yeah.
Tell me, obviously, you're taking areas of land and conserving them. How does it all work?
Well, 7 years ago, the group of conservationists and philanthropists got together and they came to the conclusion that in order to save those forests here, they have to try to buy the forests. We are trying and we are buying all the forests that are available to be bought in order to save them and to preserve them for perpetuity. And this is one of the important goals of the foundation.
So the only way to really ensure that the forest is safe is to own the forest?
Yes. We are trying to restore the forest with the original type of forest. And that should be an example to be followed at least in the Natura 2000 sites.
Do you have difficulty convincing the local people that this is going to be of direct benefit to them?
Yes, there are some difficulties because they are afraid that if there are restrictions, they will not get the compensations. But the number of the visitors will increase a lot in these kind of natural areas. And we are not talking about visitors for ski resorts or hotels. We are talking about visitors who enjoy the nature and who enjoy wilderness. And we have to admit that in Romania we have only 1.4% from the territory as national parks. So I think there is space for more.
How are you going about reassuring people?
We have to start to communicate more with the people. We have to start to bring examples because all over the world where is a national park, there were a lot of benefits. And the value of the wood from a forest, it's represented maybe only 30% because monocultures and managed forests you can find wherever. So this area on long term is very precious and we have to try to preserve it like it is now. We learn at school that through forestry we are saving the forest. And after years I realized that it's not quite like that. To save the forest you have to leave the nature to do its job.
Great to see chainsaws being used constructively for once. This is part of an FCC initiative with the help of the EU to repair the damage caused by logging tracks that crisscross these mountainsides. What happens is very rapidly, due to soil erosion, they turn into trenches and then ravines. So the idea here is to cut up all the dead wood that's left lying about and to fill them in, to cover them over with earth and then to replant. So in 30 or 40 years' time, you won't even know they've ever been here.
Ensuring the safety of wild Carpathia is not just down to its present-day inhabitants. The best way to guarantee its survival is through environmental education. Sadly, something that is currently a low priority on many school agendas. To combat this problem, an international charity is launching a fleet of purpose-built battle buses to tour remote areas of the country and teach children the importance of biodiversity and ecological issues. It's encouraging to see so much positive change taking place in areas like these. There is hope, and many high-profile figures are now lending their support to champion the need for conservation. Not just of the forests, but also the historic villages and pastoral setting that surrounds them.
Your Royal Highness, how can we preserve this wonderful landscape?
Well, I mean, it is a challenge, I think, in today's world. I mean, part of the real effort, I think, is in trying to persuade people just how precious it is. So it's how do you provide protection and sensitive development? Because the key, obviously, you can't stop everything, but is to work, I've always felt anyway, if one can, to work with local people who 9 times out of 10 all around the world don't want to see their environment destroyed. But they want to find ways of ensuring that their lives can be improved and they have better opportunities, but within a living tradition, whether it's the built environment or the management of the landscape. The terrible problem I've always felt is that people so often go through a phase of, oh, well, none of this, it's all old-fashioned and out of date, doesn't matter, irrelevant, it's old things, chuck them all away. But later on, people suddenly realize the value of all this, by which time, if you're not careful, it's too late, because you've knocked so many things down or allowed all sorts of insensitive development. And clearly there's huge demand for food and everything else, but it does seem to me that one of the most vital aspects of all this is how you work with local communities, how to help ensure the survival, the future of the smallholder. This part of the world, you can't plough it up. And if you did, you'd release vast amounts of carbon, which is completely counterproductive. The meadows are, in European and global terms, utterly unique. I have never seen anything like it. There's nothing left like this. And this is a jewel in Romania's crown. It may be difficult for people to see this now, but I think Romania is a wonderful country. They are remarkable people. They're so resilient, and Romanians have had such a horrific experience throughout their lives. And so many people, when you think of 2 world wars and then all the other horrors between the last war and until now, people have been through so much, seen so much misery and destruction. Their lives have been ruined in so many ways, and I think we owe it to them to try and find a way to ensure that the future is better for them, but in a way that enhances the culture and the traditions and the values. But unless you have the quality maintained, that integrity which attracts people because of the beauty, and how to raise the standards of accommodation and everything else on offer, it's going to be very difficult, it seems to me, for so many of these places to survive.
You were personally involved in the restoration of the house here in Zalampatak.
Absolutely. I was very lucky because I found wonderful people who knew what they were doing, and it also helped train local people in all these skills. In fact, they're innate still, these remarkable skills that people have. I just want people to understand what you can do to these houses to make them suitable for modern living. But, you can have the best of the ancient and the best of the modern. These are such special things, and we need biodiversity and human and cultural diversity. The danger of, I think, massive globalization is that before we know where we are, we've lost our identity and our meaning. And that's a dangerous moment, I think.
The rural communities and the forest are inextricably linked. As tourists pay to stay in villages like Zalampatak, so too will they explore the Carpathian hills and mountains, contributing to their continued safety and preservation.
With the right approach, this magnificent wilderness could become the Yellowstone Park of Europe and bring its people a far more sustainable income than the short-term gains obtained by felling vital forest. The tide is beginning to turn and will gain momentum with every visitor that comes here to marvel at this arboreal Eden. Romania is the warden of a vast natural landscape, the likes of which the rest of us have in our greed and ignorance destroyed. Let us hope that this beautiful country and its unique people manage to do better than us, not just for the sake of the bears, the wolves, the lynx, or the thousands of other species that rely on these pristine ecosystems, but so that all our grandchildren can grow up in a future where wild Carpathia
still remains one of the world's greatest natural wonders.